You open the message, read it twice, and decide not to answer yet. Not because you have nothing to say. You know exactly what you think, but you also know how fast one sentence can become a screenshot, a misunderstanding, a workplace issue, a dating red flag, a label, or another small mess you do not have the energy to clean up. So you wait. You leave the chat unread. You keep the profile private. You check the sender before clicking. You say less at work than you say in the car afterward. From the outside, that can look like avoidance, but maybe it is something else. Maybe it is people learning that openness without boundaries is not freedom. It is exposure. That is the quiet signal underneath a lot of ordinary behavior right now. Safety is being sold everywhere. Openness is being encouraged everywhere. Authenticity is being demanded everywhere. But ordinary people are responding with screening, silence, private accounts, delayed replies, screenshots, shorter dates, fewer comments, and less trust. That does not mean people are broken. It means the room does not feel safe enough to speak normally in. At work, this shows up in small ways. People do not always have the difficult conversation. Often they do something more human. They speak to one trusted person. They ask a manager quietly. They avoid the colleague. They keep notes. They stay polite in the meeting, then tell the truth later somewhere else. ACAS found that 44% of working-age adults in Great Britain had experienced conflict at work in the previous 12 months. That does not mean everyone is shouting across the office. Most conflict is smaller than that. Tension with managers, difficult relationships, disputes with colleagues, customers, clients, or people outside the organization. The important part is how people respond. Many do not run straight into formal systems. They manage the damage quietly, or they do nothing, and that is not always laziness. Sometimes it is risk management. Because a formal complaint can cost more than the original problem, a badly handled conversation can become reputation damage. And a manager who says, "My door is always open," may still be the person who controls your schedule, your reference, your promotion, or whether your next month gets harder. So people learn the real workplace rule. Be honest, but not too honest. Be open, but not unprotected. Be professional, which often means swallowing the part of the truth that would create consequences. Gallup's latest workplace data points to something many people already feel in their body. People are still showing up, but many are pulling back emotionally. Global employee engagement fell to 20% in 2025, while stress, loneliness, anger, sadness, and manager pressure still sit inside the working day. That matters, because when people have less emotional margin, they do not treat conflict like a personal growth exercise. They treat it like another cost. The same pattern is moving online. One version of you is safe for work. One version is safe for close friends. One version is safe for family. One version is safe for dating. One version is safe enough to be searchable. This is self-censorship, but not always in the dramatic way people talk about it. Often, it is quieter. You do not post the thing. You rewrite the comment. You delete the joke. You make the account private. You decide that being understood is not worth the risk of being misread. The public message says, "Bring your whole self." The private behavior says, "Split yourself into safe compartments." That is not just a young person problem. It is a boundary collapse problem. The internet collapsed too many rooms into one room, then acted surprised when people stopped speaking normally. Men feel this in one way. A lot of men are not walking around using grand political language about modern communication. They are doing something more concrete. They approach less. They ask fewer questions. They avoid workplace conversations that could be read the wrong way. They date more defensively. They screen for social and political signals before they invest. Some pull back from public comment because they do not trust that a mistake will be treated as a mistake. The Institute for Family Studies' 2026 dating report argues that many young adults are dating less, with only about 1 in 3 young adults actively dating. You do not have to accept every conclusion from that source to notice the behavior. Fewer attempts, more hesitation, more avoidance, more "why bother?" before the first message is even sent. For many men, the pressure sits around access and interpretation. Can I approach without being seen as creepy? Can I express interest without creating discomfort? Can I disagree without being treated as hostile? Can I be ordinary without being measured against confidence, money, politics, height, status, and emotional fluency all at once? That does not make men victims by default. It makes the behavior visible. Many are reducing risk by reducing contact. Women feel it differently. Women often carry the screening work more directly. Before a date, a woman may check the profile, look at photos, read old posts, send the location to a friend, avoid certain venues, keep the first meeting short, or decide that one strange comment is enough to leave. Online, women with visible profiles often close DMs, post less personally, avoid certain topics, watermark images, or leave debates that attract harassment. Barnardo's research on online misogyny among young people shows why some caution is not paranoia. Girls reported unwanted images, pressure around intimate photos, degrading comments, and repeated boundary crossing online. UN Women has also warned that AI-enabled online violence is pushing women in public life towards self-censorship. Women journalists and other visible women report anxiety, withdrawal, and reduced expression. So the real contrast is not men have it hard against women have it hard. That frame is too small. The sharper contrast is this. Men often experience the new boundary collapse as suspicion before contact. Women often experience it as risk after contact. One side hesitates because being read wrong can cost him. The other screens because reading wrong can cost her. Both behaviors are real. Both can become harmful when one is used to erase the other. This is where the public conversation usually breaks. It tries to pick a morally clean side, but ordinary life is not that clean. A man can be unfairly treated as a possible threat before he has done anything wrong. A woman can have very good reasons to treat unknown contact as something that needs screening. If you only defend one reality, you end up lying about the other. The same pattern is happening around online safety. The EU is pushing age verification tools to protect children online. The official language uses words that matter: privacy, safety, data minimization, protection of minors. Children should not be left alone inside systems built to capture attention, sexualize behavior, monetize insecurity, and reward extreme content. But there is another signal too. A June 2026 preprint studying the UK Online Safety Act found that major regulatory milestones were followed by sharp increases in VPN-related discussion and search interest. People were not only talking about access, they were talking about privacy, surveillance, and distrust of age verification intermediaries. That is the signal. When people respond to protection by looking for ways around the protection, the answer is not automatically that people are selfish or irresponsible. Sometimes the answer is that the solution feels like another form of exposure. This is where care can become control. A system says, upload, verify, prove, identify, comply. It calls this safety. The ordinary person hears, give us more of yourself before you can enter. That does not mean age verification is wrong. It means design matters. If child protection becomes an excuse to normalize unnecessary identity surrender, the harm does not disappear. It changes form. You can see the same pattern with money. Reuters reported that shoppers are becoming more selective, prioritizing essentials and value, while some higher-income consumers are also trading down. The conference board reported that 2/3 of U.S. consumers were cutting back because of rising prices. In Great Britain, House of Commons library data reported that in April 2026, 79% of adults said their cost of living had increased compared with the previous month, mainly because of food shopping and fuel. This changes conflict too. A person with margin can call something a boundary. A person without margin often has to call it survival. The middle-class version is, I am protecting my peace. The lower margin version is, I cannot afford one more problem. That difference matters. If your budget is tight, you do not argue with the utility company for fun. You delay the dentist, you skip the dinner, you ignore the message that might become a request. You do not take the extra trip. You do not go on the date that might cost money and emotional energy for nothing. You do not challenge the shift plan unless you know you can survive the reaction. This is the uncomfortable truth. A lot of what gets called avoidance is people doing the math. They are calculating the cost of speaking, dating, clicking, replying, posting, complaining, trusting, objecting, or asking for help. And the math is getting uglier, but there is a positive truth inside this too. People are not simply becoming weak or antisocial. Many are becoming more precise. They are learning that access is not the same as care. They are learning that openness without boundaries is not intimacy. They are learning that safety language can protect people, but it can also hide power. They are learning that privacy is not suspicious, that silence is not always cowardice, that screening is not always cruelty, that saying less can be a way to stay intact. That is not a romantic answer. It is just real. The clearest contradiction right now is between what institutions and platforms say people should do and what ordinary people actually do. The public language says, be open, be visible, be authentic, be safe, be inclusive, be connected, speak up. The private behavior says, mute, archive, screenshot, verify, delay, restrict, block, budget, leave early, say less, keep proof, and do not feed the system more than necessary. That contradiction matters because behavior is the better witness. If people trusted the room, they would not keep checking the exits. The answer is not to tell everyone to toughen up and speak louder. Many people are already tough. They are just tired of giving access to people, platforms, employers, markets, and institutions that do not carry the consequences with them. The better direction is simpler and harder. Rebuild boundaries that actually work. At work, that means conflict systems people can use without destroying themselves. Online, it means safety tools that protect children without turning everyone into a permanent ID check. In dating, it means taking women's safety seriously without treating ordinary men as guilty by category. For men, it means building contact with responsibility, not resentment. For women, it means being able to screen without being told they're paranoid. For everyone, it means accepting that trust cannot be demanded through slogans. Trust has to become verifiable again. That is how dignity comes back. Not through louder performance. Not through pretending every room is safe, but by rebuilding the line between access and care. By protecting privacy without protecting harm. By allowing caution without turning it into suspicion of everyone. By making it possible for ordinary people to speak, work, date, complain, refuse, trust, and leave without handing over more of themselves than the situation deserves. If people are hiding, do not start by calling them broken. Ask what they are protecting. That question is where the repair begins.